Have you ever stopped to notice that some people seem to have a special gift with birds? They're in the garden, on the porch, even by a simple open window, and the birds come. They land nearby. They stay. It's as if there were an invisible language between them, something that goes beyond chance or luck. And have you ever wondered why this happens with certain people and not with others? What makes this question even more intriguing is the pattern that appears repeatedly in accounts from people who have lived this experience. They are not restless people surrounded by friends with life in constant commotion. They are, most of the time, people who are alone. People going through a silence that weighs heavy. People who, for some reason, felt that the world around them had stopped noticing them. And it is precisely in those moments that a bird appears. First once, then again, and once more, until the presence of that small winged being begins to feel less casual and more deliberate. Have you ever gone through something like this? That moment when an animal simply approaches you for no apparent reason, without food in hand, without an invitation, and yet it stays. There is something deeply touching about this, and science, curiously, has a great deal to say about this phenomenon. But not only science, psychology, animal behavior, and even centuries of human observation all point in a direction that few expect to find. Birds are extraordinarily sensitive creatures to the environment around them. They perceive subtle variations in energy, posture, breathing, movement. What seems invisible to us, a person's emotional state, the quality of the silence they carry, the way they occupy space, is information to them. It is concrete data, it is language, and here it begins to get truly fascinating. Because when a person is alone, especially in moments of emotional vulnerability, something in their presence changes. The rhythm slows down. The body relaxes even if the mind is still in turmoil. Movements become less threatening, and birds, masters at reading signals of danger and safety, respond to this in a way that many humans simply cannot. What you are about to discover may surprise you, because the answer lies not only in the behavior of the birds, but in what they reveal about who we are when we are vulnerable, about what we emit when we let our guard down, about the silent connection that still exists between human beings and the natural world, even though most of us have forgotten it is there. Stay with me until the end, because this conversation goes far beyond why do little birds come close. It touches on something that concerns solitude, perception, the way we relate to the living world around us, and what happens when that world unexpectedly decides to relate back to us. There is something happening in these visits that deserves to be understood with care. And when you understand how birds truly see the world, you will likely never look at one of these approaches the same way again. But before we continue, I need to pause for just a moment, because this kind of conversation only makes sense when it stops being a monologue and becomes an encounter. And that is exactly what happens here. If you have ever lived a moment like this, that unexpected approach of a bird on a day when you were alone, thoughtful, or simply in need of something you did not know how to name, I really want you to share that in the comments right now. Not because it is an obligation, but because accounts like yours carry real weight. They touch people who are going through the same thing and who have not yet found words for what they felt. Your comment may be exactly what someone needed to read today. That is the power of a community that recognizes itself, and you are part of it. Think about it. How many times have you watched a video that moved you inside, that lit something up, and simply closed the screen without leaving any trace? Most people do that. But those who comment, who share what they felt, are doing something much greater than it seems. They are signaling to the algorithm, yes, but above all, they are telling the world, this subject matters. This conversation needs to continue. If this content makes sense to you, if it arrived at the right moment or touched something you had been carrying without realizing it, leave your like right now. It is not a small gesture. It is you saying, with one click, that this kind of content deserves to exist, deserves to be seen, deserves to reach more people who also need it. Every like here is like opening one more window, and who knows which bird flies through it. And if you have not yet activated the hype, this is the moment. Press the button now hard more than once if you want, because this channel was built exactly for you, for those who are not satisfied with the superficial, for those who want to understand what lies beneath things. The hype is not just a reaction, it is a signal that you are truly here, present, engaged, being part of this. And speaking of being part of it, if you are not yet subscribed to this channel, this is the best moment to change that. Not because you will miss some video, but because what is coming was made with people exactly like you in mind. Curious, sensitive people who like to look at the world with more depth than the ordinary. Activate the bell too, because this kind of content does not warn you when it arrives. It simply shows up, just like the birds. Your participation here is what makes this channel grow and reach more people with this kind of content. Every subscriber, every every comment, every like, all of it carries real weight. It is what transforms a video into a conversation, and a conversation into a movement. Now that you are truly part of this, let us continue. The pattern the entire world is noticing. There are stories that arrive from completely different corners of the world, and even so, share an unsettling pattern among them. A woman in rural Japan who, after losing her husband, began receiving every morning the visit of a bird that would land on her windowsill and stay until she finished her coffee. A man in Brazil who, during months of unemployment and isolation, noticed that the same great Kiskadee returned to the exact same branch every day, as if keeping a silent appointment. A young woman in England who, after a long period of anxiety and social withdrawal, began to be followed by a crow on her morning walks until the day she started feeling well again, and the crow simply stopped appearing. Coincidence? Perhaps the first time. But when animal behavior researchers began mapping these accounts, what they found was something science could no longer ignore: a real, consistent pattern that crosses cultures, climates, and different species. The hidden truth behind these visits was not in the supernatural. It was in biology, in perception, in the way certain birds read the human environment with a precision that leaves us at the very least uncomfortable with our own lack of attention to the world. But what happens behind this behavior is even more surprising, because it involves a sensory capacity that most people never imagined a bird could have. What their eyes see. Before your next move, a bird makes the decision to land or fly in less than 1 second. That time frame is not an exaggeration, it is survival. And to make that reading so quickly, they have developed over millions of years a sensory capacity that goes far beyond what our eyes can capture. They are not just seeing you, they are analyzing every detail of your body in real time. Your posture, the rhythm of your breathing, the speed and intention of each gesture. A restless person, even without meaning to cause any harm, emits constant signals of unpredictability. And for a bird, unpredictable means dangerous. It is a simple equation, engraved deep in their instinct. And here is the revelation that changes everything. People who live alone, especially those going through periods of introspection or emotional difficulty, tend to develop a completely different body language. Movements become slower, more restrained, more predictable. Without realizing it, these people become, in the eyes of a bird, the safest environment on the block. It is not magic, it is pattern reading. It is the survival mindset of birds, finding by chance exactly the kind of presence they seek. But safety is only part of the story, the language nobody taught you to speak. There is an element that runs through all these stories, that appears in every account, in every unexpected approach, and that almost no one notices because it blends in with absence. Silence. Not the empty, uncomfortable silence that we constantly try to fill, but that dense, living silence that settles when a person stops performing and simply exists. For birds, silence is not the absence of sound. It is information. It is the most reliable signal that an environment is safe enough to approach. Noisy, agitated environments full of unpredictable stimuli push away. Calm environments with quiet, steady human presence attract. And lonely people, almost without realizing it, build exactly that kind of space around themselves. They spend more time still, observing, without the intention of capturing, photographing, or interacting. And this behavior, repeated day after day, creates a powerful cumulative effect, a kind of invisible contract between human presence and the natural world around them. Here is the revelation that transforms everything. The bird did not appear out of nowhere. It had been observing you for much longer than you can imagine, evaluating, calculating, building trust in silence behind the scenes before taking the first step. Comment here: silence speaks louder. When you become a reference on their map, what makes a bird return? That question seems simple, but the answer carries a scientific weight that surprises even experienced researchers. Birds possess a memorization capacity that goes far beyond what most people imagine. Crows, for example, can recognize specific human faces and retain that memory for years. We are not talking about weeks. We are talking about a journey of recognition that persists even after long absences. Documented studies show birds that reacted differently upon encountering a specific person after more than 2 years. They did not merely remember, they demonstrated distinct behaviors such as faster approach, different vocalization, less defensive posture. The transformation of a stranger into someone familiar for them is a real, measurable process with direct impact on behavior. And the most revealing thing of all, this recognition is not built in a single memorable encounter. It forms in silent repetition, in the face that appears every morning at the same window, in the presence that does not threaten, does not chase, does not disturb. Over Over time, you stop being a generic human in their environment and become a reference, a safe point on the invisible map they draw of the territory. But there is an even deeper reason that explains why these approaches tend to happen precisely in the most difficult moments of life. Comment here. I am a reference for them. What changes in you? When the world falls silent, there is something that solitude does to human perception that is rarely discussed, and that changes everything when you understand it. In periods of isolation, the brain begins to operate differently. Attention, which normally divides itself among dozens of simultaneous social stimuli, begins to concentrate on what is nearby, on the small detail, on the subtle movement, on the leaf that trembled without wind, on the sound that came from far away. Research in neuroscience shows that the state of solitude activates regions of the brain linked to detailed observation and the search for connection. It is not weakness, it is adaptation. It is the human mind recalibrating itself to find meaning where before there was only background scenery. And it is precisely in that state that the encounter happens. Because while solitude sharpens your perception, it also transforms your presence. You begin to notice the bird, and it, which had already been observing you from behind the scenes for longer than you imagine, perceives that now you are looking back as well. 2. Beings in a state of full attention. 2 completely different forms of consciousness, recognizing each other in the same space. Perhaps this has happened to you, that moment when a gaze crossed yours and you felt something you could not name, but that stayed with you. Right here. I have felt this before. The truth, nobody expected to find here. Let us be straightforward about one thing. The bird is not trying to send you a message from the universe. It did not choose you through mysticism or through some invisible force that guides wings through the wind. The real revelation is, in a way, even more impactful than any supernatural explanation because it is true. You emit signals all the time. The way you breathe, the way you move, the way you occupy the space around you. All of nature reacts to these signals in ways that go completely unnoticed in the accelerated rhythm of daily life. What appears to be a random encounter is, in fact, the result of hundreds of silent observations accumulated over time, a journey of evaluation that happened behind the scenes without your knowledge. And here is the thought that remains, the one that transforms the way you see every unexpected visit. In a world where people rarely pay attention to one another, where genuine connection has become scarce and an authentic gaze has become rare, there are wild creatures that never stopped observing every detail of your presence. Perhaps the strangest thing is not the fact that they approach. Perhaps the strangest thing is realizing that, without meaning to, you ended up being seen by the last one you expected. If you made it this far, you did not come just to watch a video. You came to pay attention, and that, in itself, already says a great deal about who you are. This channel exists exactly for people like that, curious, sensitive, who like to look at the world with more depth than the ordinary. If this content made sense to you, it is worth keeping it close. The subscribe button is right there, and every new video is a conversation like this one, about what lies beneath things, about what we almost do not notice but feel. Leave a comment here. Have you ever received a bird's visit during a difficult moment in your life? Share how it went. Sometimes one person's account is exactly what another person needed to read. And if this conversation stayed with you in some way, if at any point you thought this makes sense, or felt that shiver of recognition, leave a like, not as an obligation but as a signal that this kind of content is worth continuing to exist. There is a video right here beside this one that complements exactly what we talked about today. Click it and continue with me over there. I think you will like what you find. See you soon.